Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. I don't know if you knew this, but anyone can get the same premium wireless for $15 a month plan that I've been enjoying. It's not just for celebrities. So do like I did and have one of your assistants switch you to Mint Mobile today. I'm told it's super easy to do at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan, equivalent to $15 per month required. Intro rate first 3 months only, then full price plan options available. Taxes and fees extra. See full terms at mintmobile.com.
This episode is brought to you by Intuit TurboTax. Didn't file with TurboTax last year? That's in the past. Now, Taxes is getting the TurboTax app and filing your own taxes for free if you didn't file with them last year. File by February 18th. All tax forms, all 100% free. Now, this is Taxes. Intuit TurboTax. New filers and filers who didn't use TurboTax last year only must start and file your own taxes in-app by February 18th. Excludes TurboTax Live. Full terms at turbotax.com.
This episode is brought to you by Allstate. Some people just know they could save hundreds on car insurance by checking Allstate first. Like you know to check the date of the big game first before you accidentally buy tickets on your 20th wedding anniversary and have to spend the next 20 years of your marriage making up for it. Yeah, checking first is smart. So check Allstate first for a quote that could save you hundreds. You're in good hands with Allstate. Savings vary. Terms apply. Allstate Fire and Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Northbrook, Illinois.
When it comes to towing, seeing is believing. That's why Chevy Truck's advanced camera technology offers up to 8 available cameras for 14 unique views, so you can focus on the view that really matters. Chevrolet, together let's drive. Learn more about Chevy Trucks at Chevy.com. Safety or driver assistance features are no substitute for the driver's responsibility to operate the vehicle in a safe manner. Read the vehicle owner's manual for important feature limitations and information.
Hey, Chicago. What do you say? Cubs gonna win today.
Welcome back to another exciting edition of the Pointless Exercise Podcast. Time for the Baseball Podcast with National Baseball writer David Brown. And so, Dave, you spent a lot of time watching and talking about the Twins.
Yes.
And they are now hanging on by their fingernails.
Yeah, I would say that's about where on the body they're hanging on, yes.
Although they're actually, if the playoffs started today, it would be a big shock because no one would be ready for it because it's next week. They would not be in.
Would love that though.
They wouldn't be in the playoffs.
No, but we need to even out the games. You know what I mean? There's a half game there, and we can't have that. So if they were to lose that game, that next game, then yes. But if they win it, they do have tiebreakers, so that's good. But
I will admit that until about a week ago, I had no idea that the plucky Tigers had actually crawled themselves into playoff contention and now an actual spot.
I saw them live. Of course, it was against the Royals, who are just doing everything they can to give away the store, making the Twins look competitive by comparison. But, and they had Jack Flaherty, too, and traded him because they were out of it, but they weren't. But does that even matter, at this point? So
apparently not.
Apparently not. But right.
Yeah.
Actually, I was wrong. If the Twins do need to tie, they're good with ties on the Tigers and Royals. But obviously it's bad if they're one game behind. But a tie will get them in. So they're not even they're hanging on in the race, but they're not hanging on to a spot. They're out at the moment.
Yeah, as we sit here today, the Orioles have the top wildcard spot. They're 4 games ahead of the Tigers and Royals, who are in and you have to say this if talking in sports, a flat-footed tie with it's the Tigers and Royals so they would get the second and third spots. The Twins are a game behind, and then the team that I'm gonna give you some evidence as to why they should be aggrieved the Seattle Mariners, who are just 2 games out of a wild card spot.
Yeah.
And their biggest problem they had wasn't Scott Service, unless he was the one who made up the schedule, is that they only got to play the White Sox 7 times. While the Tigers have played them 10 times, but finished the season this weekend with 3 with the Sox.
Oh.
The
right.
Royals are 12-1 against the White Sox. The Twins are 12-1 against the White Sox. The Mariners played them 7 times, and they beat them 6. But there's 6 other games that they didn't get to play them because they're not in the Central. And that's the teams they're chasing got to fatten up on the worst team anybody's ever seen.
AL Central power, baby.
So far, the Tigers, Royals, and Twins are 33-3 against the White Sox.
That's pretty one-sided.
Yeah. So when you throw in the other wildcard contender, the Mariners, the White Sox have played 43 games against teams that fighting for those spots, and they've won 4 of those. They're 4-39. That's great.
I know I made a joke about, I think, some team sending the White Sox their share, like making a playoff share for the White Sox, and then the White Sox can split that up among themselves. I don't remember which team it was, but it was a relevant joke at the time.
I would say any of those. They should get, if 2 of those teams make it, they should get 2 shares. Probably more
I think the owners are going to go for that. They'd water down the playoffs even more, giving the White Sox credit for shaping them. The worst team ever, at least by record.
So the White Sox have had a big hand in the American League wildcard race. And I got curious. I wonder if they've had any kind of role in the National League wildcard race. And maybe they might, actually. So the Diamondbacks, going 5-5 in their last 10, are now actually tied with the Mets for the 2nd and 3rd spot. So then the Braves are only 2 games behind both of those teams. So the Diamondbacks still, with a bad week, could miss the playoffs.
Yeah.
But the Diamondbacks went 2-1 against the White Sox. The Mets went 3-0 against the White Sox. The Braves went 1-2. So if they miss by a game or 2, they can blame it on the fact they couldn't take advantage of the Chicago White Sox.
That's kind of fun. I mean, it's a tiny sample size, but
yes,
I'm surprised. When you say these teams are 33-3 against the White Sox, I was a little surprised the White Sox got them that many times. Honestly,
yeah. Probably Grady's like, we did. That had to all be before me.
Well, he was around.
So here's that's true. Here's a trivia question for you. How many teams? So there are 29 teams other than the White Sox in Major League Baseball. Last I counted, and I count every morning just to make sure they don't sneak in an extra team or 2. Does Nashville have a team yet? No. Okay, good. Of those teams, how many do you think the White Sox currently have a winning record against this year? They have 29 possibilities. How many
have a winning record?
They have a winning record against this many teams.
I'm going to say 2.
No, it's a lot more than that.
Oh.
4.
Oh.
However, only one of those teams is in the American League. They somehow won 4 of the 6 games against the Rays. The other teams they have a winning record against are the Braves, as we just decided, the Washington Nationals, and the St. Louis Cardinals.
Oh,
which
no wonder you're so excited.
Warmed the cockles of my heart. And then you throw in, they went 3-3 against the A's. They didn't have a losing record against the A's. So if you take those 5 teams, the White Sox 13-8 against those 5 teams, that's pretty good. That's a .619 winning percentage.
That's a nice almost month.
Against everybody else, the other 24 teams in baseball, 23 and 112. Think about that.
Impossible.
Against 24 teams in baseball, they won. Am I doing the math right? That's 5 out of 29. 24 teams. 23 wins against 24 teams. No, I'm not including the White Sox. So 23 teams. One. They average one win against everybody else. 23 and 112. That's a 172 winning percentage.
I think that one of the fun things, kind of, about Twitter and the White Sox is people coming up with different ways of expressing how the White Sox are bad. And I had not heard that one yet. And I think that's a good thing. That would be a good thing for Twitter to put up there.
So tomorrow night, Tuesday night, they play the Angels at home with a chance to set the record for most losses in a season. What would be more appropriate? Would it be more appropriate for there to be a sellout or for no one to go?
Yeah, it depends on your giveaways. What are the first 10,000, the first 100 people that show up get?
Yeah,
I was going to say 10,000, but they're not doing that.
Get a campfire milkshake.
They run out of those sometimes, I've heard.
Which is amazing considering their attendance. I don't know how they ever run out of anything.
Maybe they just make 10 of them. No, we're out. Sorry.
Yeah, sorry.
Somebody showed up.
4 people can't get them because they only made 10. Yikes. So, a newsflash, White Sox are not good. Yeah, so with the Tigers all of a sudden sitting there in a playoff spot, they have the big advantage they have is that they do have 3 games with the Sox at the end of the year. And the Sox won't even be, unless they somehow get miraculously hot and sweep the Angels, they won't be fighting off. They're already ignominious for many reasons, plus the fact they've tied the Mets. But and then the Mets went 40 and 120 because they had 2 rainouts and didn't even bother.
Right.
So I guess they technically could still finish with a better winning percentage than the Mets. So that's not going to happen. They're terrible.
They could. I mean, I can't see the White Sox sweeping anybody, but I guess I could see them taking 2 out of 3 from the Angels. The Angels are the kind of team that would, with all the things going bad for the White Sox and all the anticipation of setting the record, the Angels, they could oblige, but the Angels are going to do the wrong thing, whatever it is. So I don't know what that is, but
the Angels are the second worst team in the American League at 63 and 93.
Yeah, and that's a fair assessment, regardless of their record. I think that's true.
The White Sox are 27 games behind them. For comparison, the worst 2 teams in the National League, the Rockies and Marlins, there's 3 games separating them. Not 27. And the Marlins would be 21 games ahead of the White Sox.
And what's the one thing the one thing that we've complained about pretty much every episode of this is how baseball is all it's trying to be is mediocre, really. And it's that all to compete for the playoffs, all you have to do is be kind of bad, and you're in it. Yeah. Or not, and you're not too far away. The White Sox have somehow figured out, to no benefit of their own, because they're not going to get the draft pick.
Yeah.
To be the worst team ever in an era when everybody is pretty much mediocre, and that's the goal, and that's how the system is set up, and they can't take advantage of that. It's just
it makes you wonder what would their record be if they played at a time when the majority of teams were going balls out to put the best possible product on the field.
Right.
Maybe in a weird way, this does feed into that, because if you were more top heavy, if there were like 6 teams in each league that were just trying to assemble 100-win teams, and they hoarded more of the good players, maybe then there would be more. The White Sox would have a few more teams they could actually compete with. Instead, they're completely talentless, and there's a mediocre amount of talent spread around the league, and they're all enough better than the White Sox that they can just handle them in every series.
Yeah, you might be right about that.
So Jerry Reinsdorf should complain about that. Somebody he can call Bud and complain about it. Say, hey Bud, this didn't happen when I was telling you what to do when you were interim commissioner for life. What the hell's going on?
Supposedly they had a meeting about the Athletic story. Ozzie Guillen's son doesn't believe that it happened, but somebody said, I think it was the Barstool Dave guy, said that they were all called in for a meeting to talk about the story, and I would guess who leaked what or whatever. And how do we frame the denials? And I said something like, well, Jerry can't deny being the owner of the White Sox. He's already admitted it. So
This episode is brought to you by Allstate. Some people just know they could save hundreds on car insurance by checking Allstate first. Like to check the date of the big game first before you accidentally buy tickets on your 20th wedding anniversary and have to spend the next 20 years of your marriage making up for it. Yeah, checking first is smart. So check Allstate first for a quote that could save you hundreds. You're in good hands with Allstate. Savings vary. Terms apply. Allstate Fire and Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Northbrook, Illinois.
I would have been shocked if they hadn't had a panicky bitch session where Jerry wanted to yell at some people for stating the obvious in an article. I mean, it was an interesting article, but it confirmed what everybody thought.
Yeah.
There wasn't anything in it that you're like, oh my God. It was more like, yeah, that seems about right. That's how you get to whatever.
Not even the airplane?
Well, shouldn't that people know that? I mean, you could see the airplane, right?
Yeah,
I mean, they're just like that scene in Major League where the pilot is taping the propeller back on to the plane. Are there any stewardesses? I wonder if there are any pilots. I'm surprised they didn't just go full bus. How long does it take to get to Seattle from New York? We got a game tomorrow night. Can we make it?
In their contract, though.
Man, that's quite a group, and it's funny. The best part of it, and it's the truth, and we know this, is that that's the team Jerry cares about. Like he doesn't give two shits about the Bulls, but he's obsessed with the White Sox, and the Bulls aren't in great shape, but the White Sox are, Bulls are.
Although we've always heard that he tells his kids to sell the White Sox and keep the Bulls. Must be a business decision for some reason, but I think because they own the United Center, maybe that's it.
I don't know, but as a Bulls fan, I want them to not take that advice.
Well,
so yeah, that's all right. It's a perfect time to try to get public money to build a new stadium. When you have the worst team in history. All right. So what do we think is going to happen in this final week in the American League wild card race with the three teams in the Central and the Mariners on the outside looking in? Just so you know, the Tigers have 6 home games, 3 with the Rays, 3 with the White Sox. The Royals are on the road at Washington and in Atlanta. And the Twins finish up with home games against the Marlins, which is about as close to White Sox as you can get without actually having the White Sox. And the Orioles, who will not be playing for anything those last 3 days. And then the Seattle is at Houston and home against Oakland.
What's going to happen? The Tigers kind of made me believers a little bit with the series against the Orioles. They still have a lot of holes, but they use openers still. But I think the Rays like to say too. The Rays are still in the race technically. They have not been eliminated. So I think the Rays will be. And Kevin Cash is a good manager, so they'll be competitive in that series. They might lose. They could lose a couple of those games. They'll lose at least one. And then the White Sox, it's open season. So I think the Tigers are in really good shape.
Yeah.
The Royals are blowing it worse than the Twins. But as I've said before, the Royals have so many holes in their team because they spent so many off seasons not doing what they did this off season, getting better. So those chickens have come home to roost. The Twins, it doesn't, they haven't had all their players, they've been hurt. Carlos Correa's been hurt, and Buxton and Royce Lewis they've had, but he's not swinging the bat well. Their offense, other than that, has been out to lunch. So, you'd think that they'd take 2 out of 3 for the Red Sox, but they couldn't do that. They are at home for this last series. They could win 5 games, but they'll probably split them like they've been doing. And I think it's just a matter of, how can they pass the Royals at this point? I think Seattle is still too far out. They're 2 games back. And I think if they were 1, that would be one thing. But 2 games for them probably means more like 3 based on tiebreakers. So I think it's down to who will suck less, the Royals or the Twins in the last week.
So the Royals got swept over the weekend by the Giants. And Grant Brisby pointed out that's the first Giants road sweep since July of last year.
Wow.
Yeah. So congratulations, Royals. The Royals have lost 7 in a row, and that's their second 7-game losing streak in relatively short order, I believe.
Yeah. It's so funny too how quickly the Royals were like, oh, they're coming for the Guardians because they'd won the first 2 games of that series and were ahead in the 3rd game. And then they blew it, and then it's been crap ever since. So that was one of their 7-game recent long losing streaks a couple of weeks ago. And right when they were on the verge of overtaking first place in the Central is when they peed their pants and ended it. So, but if you look at their lineup, they've got 2 great hitters, and one of them Sal Perez, who you can pitch to, and Bobby Witt, and then they have Michael Massey, who's actually from Palos Park, where I one of my doctors was in Palos Park, Dr. Grabowskis, if you're out there. Ear, nose, and throat. I had sinus surgery with Dr. Grabowskis. So they don't have any, they've got 3 hitters. They've got 2 really good starting pitchers, 2 or 3, and a hurting bullpen. So they don't have a lot, and it's showing. And they're hemorrhaging. So the Twins, it's a little, why the Twins have been so bad lately. I think what did Bob say? Bob Nightingale, they've lost 22 out of 32 or something like that. So I don't know why they've been so bad. I watch them every day. They don't hit, and they have 3 rookies in the starting rotation, and a lot of times they pitch like rookies. So these are not, we're talking about playoff teams here, and they're just so deeply flawed. I don't even know, is the American League going to send anybody to the World Series though? So it's not. I mean, the Tigers could go, and the Tigers aren't good.
No,
I mean, they're not good. The best team in baseball for the past 3 weeks. Pump the brakes on that. They might have the best record, but Tarek Skubal's great. The bullpen's very good. The lineup's kind of hit or miss. But this is not like, I don't see them on the verge of taking over the AL Central for whatever that's worth in the coming years either. So it's just not. It's funny to me again how close the White Sox could be, and yet they tried on purpose to be so far away from all this. So
yeah, Seattle would not have a tiebreaker against the Tigers or the Twins, and
that's
they who did they tie? Oh, it's got to be Kansas City. Yes,
is that 3-3?
Yeah,
that suits.
And then that does the weird. Then it's your record against. First tiebreaker is like your interdivisional record compared to their interdivisional record, which I'm sure the Royals think that's. So the second tiebreaker would get them. The White Sox would help the Royals there.
Oh,
so
glad to see they're still in it somehow.
So here's what I want to happen. I want one of these 2 to finish on either the National League wildcard race or the American League to finish on a tie, because I think until it happens and people realize how unsatisfying that's going to be like, oh, you'd be in, except, here's a piece of paper with It says it says you can't get in. I think the tie, and I think we've talked about this because I drone on about this to anybody. I'll talk to anybody about it. I get stuck in drive-thrus with people honking at me because I'm talking to the poor teenager trying to hand me my Taco Bell. And I'll be like, well, here's what I don't understand about why don't they use the tiebreakers to whittle it down to 2 teams and have the 2 teams play on Monday, and then the winner gets to go to the playoffs. And so you got 3 or 4 teams, then you use the tiebreakers to get down to the 2 and you play it. Why, if just 2 teams tie, are we like, oh, we can't play that game? God forbid. Well, why would the thing they loved more than anything was game 163, and then they actively got rid of it by doing this. Well, this is a way to bring it back. I get it that if like 4 teams tie, you can't wait a week to start the wild card round.
Right.
But you sure could wedge in one more game. I mean, who would, are fans going to get mad about having an actual winner-take-all game to watch on that Monday?
Right. No.
And you could play it in the afternoon and hide it from the precious NFL and pretend that, nobody's going to, nobody will watch it because it's Monday Night Football and we'd be inside. Well, you probably want to play in the afternoon anyway because one of those teams got to get to, Milwaukee or wherever to get beat. Or actually, you wouldn't get beat in Milwaukee. You win those 2 games.
A place like it.
So that's what I think. So hopefully, it when it finally happens, fans revolt. Actually, they won't. We'll all bitch about it on Twitter for 10 minutes and then
I don't know.
move on.
I think they'll be open to change. Maybe not for good reasons, but for whatever is in front of their face. They'll say, "Oh yeah," they'll be like, "Yeah, I kind of missed that."
Like, oh, we could sell that to Roku. We could sell this game to Roku.
Exactly.
That's why I'm amazed they got rid of it, because I guarantee you that some TV partner would stick their hand out and go, "Yeah, here's a few bucks. Let's do this."
Right.
They love sport. I mean, I get it that the expanded playoffs actually added TV inventory, which is what they wanted, but you're missing out on an actually like really interesting game by doing this. But that's very baseball.
You've mentioned before, Andy, the possibility of doing some, if there's like lots of teams tied, doing some tiebreakers on paper, and then getting down to if there's like 4 teams,
yeah, do
a tiebreaker to get it down to 1 game.
Yeah,
and I think that I remember that idea, and that's a good idea. We see that someday.
Yeah, I think that's the proper solution. I don't like the idea the 2 teams tie and one just doesn't get to go to the playoffs for no reason other than, you lost a game in June. Well, it makes every game important. Well, the problem is you don't know they're important at the time.
Right.
So it's not like fans left a game in June and we're all pissed off. Oh, that's going to screw us in 4 months. Damn it.
The players of the teams, only like 68% are still there from before. It's like there's whole new different guys.
Yeah.
So,
well, I mean, if the Royals are struggling for pitching, why don't they just bring back Jose Cuas?
Yeah. Well, wouldn't be eligible for the playoffs. So.
But this week he could probably get him in 5 of those 6 games. And he probably lose 5 out of the 6 games. So why not? I mean, I guess it's tough now because I'm sure he hasn't been back at UPS long enough to probably have a lot of vacation days.
I'm proud of myself for. I mean, I got it wrong, but one of my predictions was that Jose Cuas would lead the Cubs in losses. I think from our preseason deal. He wasn't, it didn't happen, but it might as well have.
Yeah. Well, Hector Neris is going to lead him in saves.
Right.
He's been often. Well, he's back in Houston. They get to go to the playoffs. He gets paid by the Cubs and gets to go play in the playoffs. Good job. Over in the National League, it's 3 teams for 2 spots: the Diamondbacks, the Mets, and the Braves. The Braves are on the outside looking in, 2 behind. They play but the playoffs really start kind of tomorrow night. Mets Braves 3-game series in Atlanta. And then the Braves finish up with the Royals because that's good. I like the fact that the Royals have to finish with 6 games against the National League. It says fighting for the AL wild card like a trip through Washington and Atlanta.
Well, the Senators used to be there. One of those places.
Well, this is all because baseball still can't figure out how to get even numbered. They did for a long time. Even numbered teams in each league. So that you could just finish by playing your own league. But now it's been 15 and 15 for a while, and until they expand, which they should be able to now, right? Well, I guess not. Well, maybe they could. The whole thing was Tampa and Oakland had to get their stadiums resolved. Tampa has, I guess. Although
Yep,
have they
they're on the verge of breaking ground.
I was going to say, have they dug a hole in the ground yet?
Could be soon.
And then the A's are, they're off to Sacramento for a few years, and then on to Vegas. Maybe, probably not. I don't think that's ever. I just have a hunch that's just not going to happen for whatever reason.
Well, I don't know that it's set in stone that Sacramento is, but I suppose they could force it.
Yeah.
But I could also see them going there for a year and then it being like, nope, can't do this.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, what I'd like to see Oakland do is, with the A's gone and the Raiders gone, that they tear down the Coliseum. I know you wouldn't do this because you can't, you don't want to spend public money on a stadium, but find somebody that'll build one. Build a stadium on that site, and then pressure baseball into making John Fisher sell the A's, and they just come back and they play in the park, in the place where they should have in the first place. Like, the smart thing to do would have been to move to Sacramento, tear down the Coliseum, build the Coliseum, move back from Sacramento into Oakland.
I like your Moneyball sequel. I like your screenplay here. It's good.
Yeah. I think we talked about it at the time, that then the Sacramento move wouldn't be as sad or pathetic if the whole idea was you got to go to Sacramento for 2 seasons because you're going to move back to Oakland into this fancy new ballpark that you've always wanted. But instead, it's like, well, we're going to go to Sacramento for an indeterminate amount of time, and we're not going to call ourselves the Sacramento A's. We're just going to be the A's. No town. And we don't know how long we're going to get stuck there. And then we may or may not go to Vegas. And then if we don't, all hell breaks loose again, and we got to find a place to live. That's great. They're doing a bang-up job over there.
It is a little reminiscent of the Expos moving to Washington, where they were in Puerto Rico for a lot, and it's not exactly the same thing. Supposedly, the Warriors owner, Joe Lacob, is interested in buying the A's, and he's been shut out. I don't know if that's true, but that's what a lot of the anti-Fisher people say. Yeah. That there is a person that could buy them and keep them in Oakland, but maybe that will get them a team at some point again.
Yeah. I don't understand. What is the fun? I mean, I guess they don't care, right? It's all a business. It's all money on paper, or numbers on paper.
Yeah.
What's the fun of owning a team if you're going to run it like this? Is there any pleasure to be gotten out of it? Everybody hates you. The team sucks. It's your fault. There is no easy, like, okay, but we're doing this. We're taking step A to get to step B. Step B seems a fantasy. At some point, don't you just cash out? Because the team is worth, just because it's a baseball team, there's only 30 of them. It's worth more than what you paid for. Somebody's going to give you, you're going to make money because somebody's going to take it off your hands. Why don't you just do it? I don't understand it. Why do you even want to own that thing if all that's going to do is everybody knows you're an idiot because you run it so poorly?
Maybe they've just done a better job of bringing in owners who don't necessarily think like that. Maybe there's just too many of them who are curmudgeonly.
Maybe he's holding out for the Frank McCourt parking lot deal. Fine. We'll build, when they build a new stadium, you can get all the money from the parking lots. Good. Great. That's what I want. But we'll see what happens in the National League. That wild card spot, that's a ticket to the World Series. The Phillies have used it.
Yeah.
The Diamondbacks have used it. Go get them. I mean,
I think
from
the Brewers, what if this is finally their time?
Yeah. Well, they got rid of Craig Counsell, so that was clearly he was holding them back.
That's all they needed to do.
All they needed to get rid of him, and then the ruddy-faced Pat Murphy was the guy that held the keys to everything. Everything's better now,
right?
With Pat. Well, that brings us smoothly to the other thing I want to talk about, which is the end of the year for the Cubs, and the thing that I want to see Marquee Sports Network televised. I would actually pay the $20 to get the Marquee app. Although Crane teased us that the Cubs were going to fall off of Comcast sometime in this month because the deal expired in September. And if they fell off now, it wouldn't bother me a bit. Go ahead. You can take them off. I don't need to see the list. I've seen enough. I don't need to see the last 6 games. But they don't appear to be falling off. But if they did, then you could just pay him $20 and you could just watch Marquee on your phone or your laptop, whatever. It'd be great. But I would like to see, inevitably there will be a meeting early next week, hopefully on Monday, where Craig Counsell and Jed sit down and try to figure out, all right, what the fuck are we going to do now? And I've joked that, Craig walks in and he throws down his contract and says, well, I got 4 more years on this, and I know you don't on yours. So here's what we're going to do. But when Craig took the job, he didn't, not only did he not bring any coaches with him from Milwaukee, they only changed one coach. They needed a bench coach. And the guy they hired, Ryan Flaherty, actually has a connection to Carter Hawkins. They played together at Vanderbilt. No connection with Craig other than they're skinny, and they kind of look alike when they stand next to each other in the dugout. So I expect, with no proof to back it up, which is the best kind, that there will be significant coaching changes for your Chicago Cubs. Unless Craig looked around and said, it's a hell of a staff. These guys are all great. He did a hell of it. David Ross hired amazing coaches, and I'm keeping them for the duration.
Well, changing out the coaches, the assistant coaches would be cheaper than spending in the free agent market.
Yeah,
so.
Right. Oh, we could take these same mediocre ball players and just a little better coaching. All of a sudden, it's a bunch more wins. When they got eliminated in the press conference before the game the next day, on which Patrick Mooney in The Athletic took a very I appreciated the kind of slap he took when he said, usually these pregame press conferences are a lot of softball questions and a lot of softball answers. But today, Craig actually sat there and said, this is ridiculous. We should be building 90-win teams, not shooting for barely over 500 and hope you can crawl into the playoffs, which he's 100% right. But other people have been bitching about that now for a while, Craig.
Right. What are you new here?
Yeah. The problem the Cubs have is there's not a lot. They kind of have a landlocked roster. They make it very difficult to improve it, even if they had the balls to spend money and do it. Your left fielder has a no trade clause for the next. He's got 2 more years on that. Seiya has a no trade clause. He's got 2 more years on that. Dansby has 5 years of no trade clause at shortstop. All signs are that Cody Bellinger will eventually just decide he wants his $27.5 million and he'll come back. He ironically could be traded. I have a feeling Scott Boras his head would explode if Cody opted back in and then Jet traded him. So you're kind of stuck with you're kind of stuck trying to trade Nico Horner to fix all your problems. I don't know that he's worth enough to actually fix your problem.
Hey, what do you think of them bringing back Justin Steele to pitch, and then they gave him a really short outing the other day, and now he's got.
Well, he threw a lot of pitches. It was a short outing, but he got all his pitches in. Yeah, if I wanted to be charitable, I would say that it was one of those things where it was for his peace of mind going into the offseason.
Yeah, they
wanted him to pitch and go, look, your elbow's okay. You don't have to worry about it all winter. This is fine. But they're the Cubs, and it always worries me when they've never been able to accurately read an MRI. I don't even know if the machine's plugged in, or if it might not even be a real one. It's like the box that the MRI comes in, and they just cut a hole in it, and you just stick your arm in there, and they pretend they took a picture.
MRI glory hole.
Like, wow, this one's a lot less claustrophobic than the one on my last team. Yeah, well, it's a cutting edge technology. Put your arm in there. All right. Oh, everything looks good. So there is some fear there that they put him at risk for no reason. You'd like to think that they said, okay, his elbow's fine. Let's get him out there one more time so that he goes into the offseason knowing that his arm's not going to fall off.
Yeah.
But I don't know. It didn't make a lot of sense. I would have just shut him down. Considering last year they brought Adbert back at the end of the season and he pitched and they were saying, oh, everything's fine. And then he struggled early this year and they're like, oh, he needs Tommy John surgery.
Ooh.
Oh, does he? That's good. Usually there's a way to figure that out. So I do worry about that because, your pitching staff is really, for next year, is still based on Justin being healthy and good. Shota doing this again, which this was a lot of fun. I worry very much that I feel like he pitches on the margins and he's really good at it. But a year or two more on his arm and all of a sudden those same pitches aren't getting past the hitter. They're ending up crashing off the scoreboard. I don't know that. And he's got a weird contract. He's got he can opt in now for they can opt in for 3 more years. It's the whole structure of his deal was weird, but so we'll see what they decide to do with him. So my crazy idea for the Cubs was, I think Craig's a smart guy. Why don't you do what the Celtics did with Brad Stevens and just say, why don't you just run this? And go hire your own manager, and you can be in charge of baseball operations. And I have a feeling it's an eventual goal of Craig's to do that.
Yeah,
and maybe they'll just be like, let's do it now. We're already paying you, and we got to pay Jed for a year to not work, and then find somebody to manage. I don't know. I have no. I boldly said last year at this time there was no way they would fire David Ross, and they fired him.
Yeah.
So who knows what could happen? But speaking of that, I think I already know David Ross's next job.
Yes.
With David Bell, you don't even have to. You barely have to. It's just like the Bears. You barely have to change the plaque on the office. It's even the same amount of letters. You can just try to carve BELL into ROSS somehow.
Well, they say that's half the reason the Guardians became the Guardians, because they already had the Ians.
Yeah.
And stuff.
They only changed IN to GUAR.
Right.
D. Guardians. I can't spell. Yeah, DIANS. So they only had to change that part of it. I feel like the Guardians, it's a perfectly fine nickname. We got used to it pretty fast. I don't find myself calling them the Indians anymore.
Yeah.
I feel like they didn't do a great job of explaining why they're the Guardians, because it actually is. I mean, I know they do it. There's the thing on the baseball on the sleeve and other stuff, but I didn't know because I don't live in Cleveland, and I don't vacation there. Joakim Noah told me not to. The Guardians on that bridge are really cool.
Yeah.
And I feel like they could have done something cooler with on the uniform itself. You're replacing one of the all-time greats in Chief Wahoo. Terribly, terribly offensive, but really cool, until you grew up and realize, oh, that's bad. That's bad.
That's my life story right there. I think.
As a kid, you thought that was the cool. Look, oh, that's awesome. Look at that. Look at those teeth.
Isn't he cute?
It just feels like they're missing an opportunity there with the imagery of the Guardian. But yeah.
Well, I for sure. I think I'll take it a step further. I think they might have even been able to keep Indians as a nickname, even though it's not preferred. Because the really offensive thing has been the mascot, the logo for years. Newer chief with this fire engine red skin, and then the generation before that, like the Bob Feller, just a really, in a way, more offensive.
Yeah, that one was somehow even worse than that Wahoo, the nose. He's the one we grew up with he's very cartoony. Seems less offensive. The other one looked like somebody literally trying to draw an offensive Indian. and then them
Like
putting it
that-
on their
that's almost
uniforms.
one of those like Disney, like a Disney cartoon, maybe
Yeah.
like a different kind of cartoon, but like one of those cartoons from the 30s that they shouldn't have drawn, but they did. I think they could have gotten away with keeping Indians had they ditched the dude and incorporated the Guardian motif image or whatever, and made it more like the Blackhawks guy, and done it that way. And if they had done that 75 years ago,
Yeah.
I mean that's maybe a little too much heads up, but at some point, if you don't have the chief, I think that's like at least half, if not 3/4 of everyone's ire against the Indians' name and all that. They missed an opportunity. You're right, and I think they still could be the Indians. They could still get away with it had their mascot logo not been so.
Yeah, I can tell you, Uncle Larry is not. He's not going to spring to change the signs back.
No, it's now.
You know how much I spent on that shit? No, we're not going back to that. I'm not spending that.
But they could bring the Guardian dudes, because I mean that they sort of vaguely look like they could be some kind of Native American guy. Yeah. So they could still bring them back. And I don't like the G.
No.
I mean, they should focus. The C is good. Their C is really good.
Yeah.
They have a very good C.
Yeah, they're good.
And it is kind of a callback to one of the C's that they had in like the 70s. Yeah. The Larvel Blanks era. I like to call it. Like pre-Len Barker. Buddy Bell, let's say. And that looks good. That makes people think of I'm sure the residents make them think of the 70s Indians. And put that together with the bridge guys, with the Guardian guys, and you got a nice thing going there.
Yeah, you're right. They picked a good font, and it's very important.
Yes,
you got to get the typeface right, and they did it. They did a nice job with that.
Yeah.
I think if the Cubs don't want to spend on players, they should at least throw me a bone. Can we fix the road grays? They're just so boring. Like, the Cubs have a crapload of cool old uniform styles.
Yeah.
And there's a lot you could do with it, and they just don't. It's like, come on. That thing's been begging for a makeover for 20 years, maybe longer than that. I don't even remember.
Is one of the iterations one that they sort of the ones in the late 70s where they wore blue and they had the white pinstripes. Those were interesting looking, and then they went into the solid blue color, which I really like. I like the 84 Ryan Sandberg uniforms. I think that would be great. But if you want to have a gray uniform, is there one or two that you liked from the 90s that they could go back to? Or are you talking like going back to 1945?
So when they got rid of the blues, they had like an interim. Well, they had those. What order did they go? I think they went with the ones that said Chicago, where the middle C was the Cub logo. That was like that had been like their like the Vine Line masthead.
Yes,
when we were kids.
I can see it in my head.
And they wore those for 2 years, I think. Then they switched to the Cuba ones, where they wrote Cubs in script, and Keith Olbermann was 100% right. It looked like it said Cuba. And then they switched to the ones. I'm looking. Oh, it's not up. I have a plaque that has all the old uniform styles on it somewhere down here, but I don't have it hanging up. And the ones they wear now, they've had for a long time. So if I were in charge of the Cubs, this is what we would do. I've never liked the alternate blues. I don't think they're very good. I would take that alternate blue and I would do a button-up version of the 84 Cub jersey. That would be our alternate. Would be the old 84 one. And then either come up with a new idea for the grays or go back. There was somewhere, and I'm going to get my decades wrong. I think it was in the 50s where they had a nice looking one where it said Chicago and they had kind of there's like a line, like an arched line under Chicago.
Mm-hmm.
I would also go with a slightly darker gray than they have to make it look a little bit more like, but not like, remember the Diamondbacks tried to do that and they went they had these ugly, they went way too dark. I think you would go a little darker than that. And then obviously leave the home ones alone. But and then I think they failed miserably with the City Connects. I don't like those uniforms at all. I hate the blue pants. I joke all the time. They look like they're Jiffy Lube guys. They should be out. There might be a better use of some of the guys in the bullpen and have them try to change people's oil instead of trying to hold a lead. I think they should have made Nike do something with those baby blue jerseys they used to wear. Because you can have one alternate and a City Connect and then a home and a road. Those are your 4 uniform choices. And the Cubs could have 4 really cool, strong uniforms if they redid the City Connects and had those kind of, but I have a big problem. I don't like baby blue on baby blue. I like the way the Royals do it. I like that they wear their white pants with their baby blues. I think that's a sharp look. I say it's too much baby blue otherwise.
Right.
But you could do something with that, and then you would bring back the 84 jerseys, which you're not alone. People really like those. You still see them. There was a guy sitting behind home plate yesterday that had one on. You saw him in every shot. And then your home uniforms are about perfect, especially next year when the names go back to 3 inches instead of 2, when you get rid of that ridiculous thing we suffered through this year. And then you can do whatever the hell you want with the grays. And then that'll distract us for a little while, and then we won't even notice that it's the same. You just brought the same shitty team back for another year because you were contractually obligated to most of them, and you just decided that was the easiest way to do it. It's funny, you can Cub fans, baseball fans in general, but Cub fans especially. It's really easy to sell them on, like, I would say there's a lot of Cub fans who just buy the company line, right? Like, oh, it's good. No, the going over the luxury tax, that's bad. That's very bad. You can't sustain that. So,
It's not your money.
Well, and don't pretend like the Dodgers don't exist, right?
Right.
Like the supposed penalties have harmed them so much that they win 100 games every year, and they have a great farm system with all these penalties. They somehow managed to do it. And then you sell them on the prospects. There's always the next great crop of Cubs, they're just down there in Iowa. They're just waiting. Whoa, it's going to be exciting. But then we also found out that fans will rationalize all kinds of stuff, like the idea that they were going to stay under. It's stupid to just barely go over the luxury tax, right? Because then you pay the penalties, you don't get any of the advantage.
Right.
And so that's why the Cubs were conservative at the trade deadline, and they didn't do anything else. And then Jed's like, oh yeah, by the way, we accidentally went over the. Look, we didn't say accidentally. We went over the luxury tax by a little bit. Oh, good. So once you went over, you could have gone balls out and actually acquired a couple of, really good players, but you just didn't do that. Right. I was on the Wrigleyville Nation podcast last night, and we were talking. They brought up Jed's wonderful term, intelligent spending. That's what he was going to do. He's going to do intelligent spending, which on its face is hilarious to even say it that way. In other words, well, I have 2 choices. I could either spend intelligently or I could just throw a bunch of fucking money around and just blow it all. What do you want me to do? But the idea that fans and the media immediately took intelligent spending to mean not spending a lot of money. To me, intelligent spending is simply getting a good return on what you spend. Right. So if you're going to throw a lot of money at a guy, you go get a great player who's going to give give you great production. Right? You can barely screw up a Juan Soto contract, no matter how much you spend. I mean, whether deferred money or not, does $700 million for Shohei seem like it's crazy anymore?
No.
And here's a guy who this is his rehab season from Tommy John surgery, and he's the first 50-50 player ever. He just decided I'm just going to fuck around this year and see if I can have the greatest season any hitter's ever had. Yeah, and I could. Congratulations. Next year, I'll go back to pitching too. That'll be fun. Yeah, to me, intelligent spending to me is not $60 million for 3 years for Ian Happ with a no trade clause. That's not intelligent. I don't care if he got Ian for 3 years at $30 million with a no trade clause. Why are you giving him a no trade? He's a guy who at the deadline was starting to play well again, and that actually could have got you something I think fairly good for Ian Happ. It could have freed up left field for supposed one of these wonderful prospects that you're always bragging about. But it's almost like you don't mind having left field blocked with him because you realize, those guys at Iowa really aren't that damn good. So this is fine. We live in the best world now. We have a guy out there, and we tell the fans, oh, this guy's great. We'd love to bring him up, but don't even where to play it. But he's amazing. So we get a lot of that. I have a real concern about the immediate future of the Cubs, given that I feel like we know they don't want to spend a lot of money. They clearly don't. I mean, But they spend too much money for they spend too much money for their production. You know, like, well, you spent $236 million. Yeah, you did. And you got a team that you probably could have assembled a reasonable facsimile of that shit for $110 million and saved yourself a lot of money.
Right.
The answer to that is not to try to assemble the $110 million team then. The answer is these rosters cost real money and we need to spend more because our team's not good enough. But I worry that they don't have they're not self-motivated enough to do that. And that the guys in the farm system are they're younger versions of what they already have.
Yeah.
Guys who are going to come up and be pretty good, but not really make a difference. Like the roster they have right now, if you look around their starting lineup, those guys they'd be really good players to have on a team if you had like 2 stars to go with them. Right. Then all of a sudden, Nico Horner, we just let him do his thing at second base. He can handle, he's the perfect defensive second baseman post shift because he can handle all that stuff. And Dansby is a great defensive shortstop. He is. That would be great. But you have those 2 guys, but then you're not getting any huge production anywhere else. And this is kind of there. And then the answer is, we'll trade Nico, we'll plug Matt Shaw in at second base. Well, you'll increase the offense a little bit, but your defense won't be as good. And chances are your team will even out. You'll win 83 games a different way next year. So I don't even know I'm not even asking you. That's not even a question. That's just me bitching.
Well, it does, you're sort of telling the Cubs to do what the Yankees did. Now, by bringing in Soto. Yeah. And, but that's only for now, as far as whatever he's being paid, that's not a free agent contract. So it's not exactly the same thing. But what's the difference between the Yankees this year and last year? Mostly it's that they have Judge and Soto.
Yeah.
So, you're right about putting your resources into trying to get great players rather than pretty good players, and maybe overpaying for them a little. I think I've seen studies of how teams have done free agency or just roster construction in general, saying that's where they get in trouble. They bring in too many guys like Ian Happ who are not a good value. There you go. There's a word that they can understand, and don't push the envelope of like an offense like a person like Soto does. Yeah. So I think that's basically what you're saying. And the Cubs aren't going to spend like the Yankees, but the truth is they need at least one more great player than they have, at least. So right now, Soto is available. Doesn't seem like they're going to jump at him, but that's the kind of thing they need to do to go to the next level.
Yeah. They built a supporting cast. And they're in need of a star, and they don't.
Right.
What they've built is every good Bulls team post Michael Jordan.
I was just thinking about Horace Grant.
Like, man, if there was one great player, this team would be set up because you've got depth and you've got role players, you got everything you need. But without the star, you've got a 44 win basketball team. Well, if you build this roster, you get an 83 win baseball team.
Right.
And it's, you look at it like, you go around, it's like, nobody's really bad. They don't have any really bad play. I mean, they do. They've got some bad players on the bench. Every time Patrick Wisdom or pops out of the dugout, it's just like, I can't believe this guy's still here.
Pop back down.
But they don't have anybody that, there's nobody that other teams can't just pitch to. There's a way to pitch to every one of those Cubs, and they do. Yeah. And that's a big problem. And then when you take away your own roster flexibility, because you felt like the only way to get Seiya to come to you out of Japan was to give him a no trade, and Judd's going to have to sit down. It's going to take an hour for him to try to explain to me why Ian Happ got a no trade clause. I don't understand it. And then when they went shortstop shopping, there were 5 guys, and they went for the one that cost the least, and they found out why. Like Dansby has been he's better defensively than I thought he was, and I thought he was good. But the bat doesn't play anymore, and he's getting older. He's not going to hit more now.
Right.
And you've got 5 more years of it. So, great. We've got all winter to bitch about the Cubs. And we will. But yeah, so we do have an interesting week. The owners got it right. There's 2 wild card races for everybody to obsess about over the last 6 games. I think every team has 6 games left. I don't think anybody. There are a few teams playing today. Today's Monday seemed like the day they built into the schedule for rainouts.
There's at least a couple teams. The Guardians, I know, don't play twice their off day twice this week. And somebody, I was telling you before about the half game difference between the Royals and somebody. So there's a couple teams that have 5, but a couple of days off. But yeah, I would not call the American League wildcard race like a barn burner or one that.
No.
It's the Tigers are somewhat interesting, but it's not like they're going up against an interesting opponent. It's like, they overcame the Twins and the Royals, so great. The National League, those are better quality teams. I don't know how much drama there is, but like the Mets have an interesting story mostly because they said before the season that we're not going to compete. We're not going to bother this year.
Most of their payroll is to go pay 2 old guys to pitch in Texas and one's hurt and the other one's not going to make the playoff rotation. It looks like they're getting a lot of money from the Mets. No, I think the Mets are a good example of just how much the Cubs missed the bar by, because that Mets team's not that good. And it could be as simple as the difference between the Mets and the Cubs is that the Mets have Francisco Liriano and the Cubs don't.
Lindor
or Liriano. Either. It's good. Yes, Francisco Lindor. I like him so much that I got his name wrong.
Right. Well, Liriano's thrown a no-hitter, so you're fine.
Yeah, I remember when the Cubs, the 2015 Cubs, really struggled with Liriano, and I thought, it turns out it wouldn't have mattered because Jake just decided he wasn't going to run in the wild card game. But I really thought that the Clint Turtle screwed up by pitching Garrett Cole against the Cubs instead of Liriano.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm only clinging to things from 11 years ago now or 9 years ago because
maybe they cling to you.
There hasn't been a lot of excitement. Yeah, but we'll see. It'll be interesting. I do wonder if you're the Braves, they used to be in Milwaukee, the Brewers, if you'd rather have the Mets or the Braves. Like the Braves are hurt. All their good players are out. And then the Mets just don't seem that good. This does seem like this is Milwaukee's year to actually survive those first 2 days.
Yeah.
And I just feel like they won't.
It's not like they're that good.
No, I just feel like they won't. Like this is the year they get the chance, and this is the year they can't throw Corbin Burns and Adam because he's in Baltimore. And they're like, shit. Well, that would have worked, but I guess we're going home again. And I don't really.
But the Brewers do have they've done a good job of bringing up guys from the minor leagues who I've never heard of who have been pitching great. But most of them we're talking about like middle relievers with German names. I don't know who they are, but they've pitched well out of nowhere. So they're kind of a nice story. But it's not like I could. Churio's been pretty good for a 19, 20-year-old.
Yep. Yeah, I enjoyed all the hand wringing about, they're going to have non-alcoholic champagne, and because it's like, it's Wisconsin, for Christ's sakes, 12-year-olds can drink in Wisconsin.
Yeah, and it's not like they're going to a bar and being served, and that's like 9/10 of why it's illegal for him to drink.
Yeah.
Yeah,
they think the clubhouse is going to get raided.
Right.
You're supplying alcohol to an underage person.
Right.
Yeah, I don't think that was going to happen. Most of that simply was a sports writer's clever way of pointing out how young he is.
Look, clever.
He can't even drink. He's such a precocious little guy. That's why I still want that's why I proposed at the deadline the Cubs trade for his little brother. Just so.
Sure.
Say, hey, we've got our own. He's not as good.
Yeah, the National League teams, and it's not for great reasons, but Bob Uecker being 99 years old, it would be nice for him to have a chance to call another World Series, maybe win one. I know Cubs fans don't want to hear that, but that's kind of interesting. The Padres are interesting to me just because they got rid of Soto and Preller, who's almost been fired like 4 times. makes his best team. Yu Darvish has been missing for half the season. Nobody knows why. And they're in it, and they look pretty good. And the Dodgers have, Mookie's great to pay attention to, and Shohei's doing what he's doing, but they have like more fatal flaws than anybody else. There's some, if you're a hardcore baseball fan, these are some mildly interesting teams. They're not great teams, but the Phillies, they've got, it seems like they're sort of like the Brewers, but good. Like they're on the verge of, but
I wonder if somebody should write some stat nerd should look at, because the Dodgers are the most top heavy team. Like their first 4 hitters are great, and then the rest of their lineup is bad. And somebody should, would they be better off, somehow like scattering those guys? So they're not the first 4, and then you get a break with the next 5 hitters. Like, Is there some kind of statistical thing that shows you should stick a couple of the other guys hitting second and fourth just to spread it out?
That's how lineups used to be made. That's why you had like the fast guy leading off, and then the bunter hitting second, and that's how lineups used to be made. And it's I wonder maybe if they should bring it back. The problem with the Dodgers though is all their pitchers are died.
Yeah.
So
again, that's what got him last year. It got him, and it's what killed him in 21 when they basically Max Scherzer threw his arm on. He got the final out against on a contested check swing, but he got the final out against the Giants, and then he had nothing left for the Braves at all, and he was the only guy they had. That's when they still had Urias though. But yeah, they've run out of pitching again, and you almost look at it like, well, it's probably the Phillies to win. But I would be worried about facing the Padres. I mean, they basically decided we'll just build a bullpen that can get us through 6 innings in every game if we need to. And now you get to the playoffs and you fall behind the Padres, and all of a sudden they're bringing arm after arm after arm out against you. It will be interesting.
Dylan Cease, no hitter at any point. And Darvish, his arm will be fresh after mysteriously disappearing for a while. And I don't know. I mean, yeah, the Mets have Grimace. Grimace came to a game and threw out a first pitch, and ever since they've now painted a seat purple. So these are the kinds of things that I look at as far as who you're betting on, either figuratively or literally. These are the kinds of things you need to look into.
Yeah, well, that is the important stuff. And then what I really enjoy on Wild Card Weekend is Wild Card Week. It's not even a week; it's 3 days, 4 days, right? But ESPN gets all the games, and they really only have one baseball crew. So they somehow manage, like Carl Ravitch and those guys will somehow hit. Like I think if they could, they'd have them do 2 games in a day. They'd try to fly them. But you're going to get Michael Kay and A-Rod, I think, because everybody wants that. And then you're going to get like, and they got to like a day. Probably yesterday they realized, do we have Jessica Mendoza's phone number? Because we probably need her to do a game. It's like, could we? Is that fine? Yeah. They slap those together, and then only in baseball you get down to the most important games of the year, and TBS has a crew that hasn't worked all year, and they have to do a bunch of games. And ESPN has 3 crews that haven't done a game, and they're going to do it. It's a wonderful showcase for. And then I have a team I will automatically mute, which is the one that has AJ Pierzynski and Adam Wainwright on it together. I can't handle any of that. I feel bad for Adam Amin, but he seems to enjoy them, so maybe I shouldn't feel bad for him.
Is that like a personal assault? Do you feel that AJ and
yes, Adam, I feel like they literally put that team together just to piss me off.
Right.
You know what Dolan will hate? These 2 assholes. Let's get them together. Yeah, that's great. All right, but we got to get through this week first before we worry about any of that. So this was fun. So thanks, Dave.
Thanks, Andy.
Many of us have herpes.
No, I thought it generally sucked. I didn't think it was a specific suck. I thought it was like an all-encompassing type of suck. So, we're going to try and rectify that. But for right now, I'm going to be pretty pissed about it.
It's fitting. It's got to be done with one of the best games of all time. Just unbelievable. Got to congratulate the Dolan family.
Sean, my podcast co-host Andy, you were his favorite player growing up.
Oh, thank you so much. Awesome.